Everybody. Today's video is over lesson 5-1, and your assignment was on page 375, numbers 1 through 7. But before we get into the assignment, we need to do some background, learn some vocab, and understand what some of these different things mean. So today's assignment really talks about lines and angles, and more specifically looking at when we have two parallel lines and they're cut by what we call a transversal. So if you look at my example here, lines A and B are what we call parallel lines, right? They never cross, they never intersect. So lines A and B here are parallel. Line T that goes through lines A and B is called a transversal, okay? So these two are parallel, and line T is a transversal. It just cuts through lines A and B. It transverses through them, however you want to describe that. But that is what that line is considered. And when this happens, we have some very fundamental things that happen. Some very cool cool ideas that come up through this. So there's a lot of vocab that we're going to look at. So the first vocab we're going to look at is called alternate interior angles. Okay, alternate interior angles. And alternate interior angles, if you think about it, they're on the inside of the parallel lines, right? So they're going to be within these two lines here. All right. And if you think about alternate, right? Alternate kind of means like opposite almost. And if you look at this, an example would be like angle 3 and angle 6. So alternate interior angles would be considered angle 3 and angle 6. Okay, so that this symbol right here just means angle, and so that means angle 3 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles, which means they are congruent, which means they are the same measure. Okay. Also considering angle 4 and angle 5, those are also alternate interior angles, which means they are also congruent. Okay. So if you have alternate interior angles, then it's safe to say that you also have alternate exterior angles. Very similar, right? If you're thinking about exterior, that's on the outside, right? So this was interior. That means exterior is going to be on the outside of your parallel lines, right? So on these sides. So, for example, 1, 2, 7, and 8, those are all exterior angles. So alternate exterior angles, if you're thinking about opposite, would be like angle 1 and angle 8. And since those are alternate exterior angles, they are also congruent. They are the same measure. Same thing with angle 7 and angle 2, or angle 2 and angle 7. Okay, those are also congruent because they are alternate exterior angles. Okay? Excuse me. So alternate interior and alternate exterior angles are all congruent, and they are opposite of each other. Another vocab word we need to consider is what we call corresponding angles. Okay, corresponding. And corresponding really refers to being in the same place based on, right, if you were to kind of pick it up and move it, it would be the same angle. Okay, so for example here, angle 1 and angle 5 would be corresponding angles, right? Angle 1 and angle 5 are, right, if I were to pick this thing up, right, this box, and I were to move it down here, angle 1 and angle 5 would be in the exact same spot, right? Similarly, angle 2 and angle 6 would also be corresponding angles, right? Meaning that they have the exact same properties. Okay, so angle 1 and angle 5, angle 2 and angle 6, angle 3 and angle 7 would be corresponding angles. And lastly, angle 4 and angle 8 would be corresponding. Okay, so all of those would be corresponding angles. Okay, continuing on that, we also have, and this will not be in the assignment today, but you still need to know it. We have what we call vertical angles. Okay, vertical angles are any time that you see an X in some way, shape, or form, right? Something like this, right? Two lines cross at an X. Vertical angles are going to be across from each other. For example, angle A and angle C would be vertical. They would also be congruent then. Angle B and angle D would also be vertical. Okay, so angle A and C are vertical angles and they are congruent, and then same thing with B and D. Okay, and the last one we need to consider, the last kind of idea, is the angle measures and what they can make. What we have is a complementary and supplementary. So those two vocab words are very important. So complementary, maybe, there we go. Complementary adds up to be 90 degrees. Supplementary adds up to be 180 degrees, okay? That's what the angle measures come up to, right? So if I have an angle, a 90-degree angle that is made up of more than one angle, so for example, angle A and angle B here would be considered complementary because the two angles added together make a right angle, which is 90 degrees. If I had a straight line of some sort, right? For example, I have these two lines crossed. Angle C and angle D here would be what we call supplementary angles, because when you add C and D together, they give us a 180-degree angle or a straight line. Okay, so think about C comes before S, so 90 becomes before 180, right? That's how I always think about it. Just a nice little trick. But definitely have these vocab words beside you. That way you can figure out what these mean. Okay. Now that we have all this vocab out of the way, let's look at the assignment and see what we can do. Okay. So your assignment was numbers 1 through 7. Okay. And so on 1 and 2, you're having to decide whether they're alternate interior, alternate exterior, or corresponding. Okay. So 2 and 4, think about, okay, what is happening? Are they both on the inside? Are they both on the outside? Or if they're not, are they corresponding? Meaning, could you pick it up and move it, and then they would have the exact same properties? Okay. For number 3, we have this flag shown at the right. Line A is parallel to line B, and we have this transversal that goes through it. Now, if measure of angle 1 is 150 degrees, so this measure here is 150, find the measure of angle 4 and the measure of angle 7. And we need to justify it, okay? We can't just give it the answer and say, yep, that's it. We have to give a reason based on the vocab that we know. So what would make angle 4? Well, we know that it makes a straight line, right? Angle 1 and angle 4 make a straight line. So angle 1 is 150. So what would angle 4 have to be, since it makes a straight line, to equal 180? Well, that means it would have to be 30 degrees, right? So we could say that the measure of angle 4 is 30 degrees because angle 1 and angle 4 are supplementary, right? They make a straight line. They are 180 degrees, right? Since they are supplementary, they make a straight line and are 180 degrees. And angle 7, if we notice 1 and 7, right? If I were to pick this up, let me get my pen. There we go. If I were to somehow pick this side up right here and move it, angle 1 and angle 7 would fall right on top of each other. So that means angle 1 and angle 7 are corresponding angles. So that means 1 and 7 are congruent. So the measure of angle 7 is 150 degrees because angle 1 and angle 7 are corresponding angles. Okay? So that's kind of the idea. That's how you would justify it. Okay? So 4, 5, and 6, we have to refer to the figure at the right. And it says line S is parallel to line T, and then we have these transversals that go through it. Okay? The measure of angle 2 is 110 degrees, and the measure of angle 11 is 137. I would just go ahead and I would write in those numbers. That way I don't forget it. And I already messed up writing the wrong number. So angle 2 was 110, and angle 11 was 137. And we have to give all the other angle measures that's listed here and justify it. So angle 7 is right here, and we have to figure out, okay, which one is it going to be related to? Is it going to be related to angle 11 or angle 2? Because it's got to be related to one of them somehow. All right, so notice the line that connects angle 7. What line or what transversal is it connected to? Well, it's connected to this line right here, line R. So this is going to be the transversal that we're using. So what other angle is connected to it? Well, that would be angle 2, which is right here. Okay? Now, it looks like, as they don't seem to be related. However, angle 2 is related to angle 6, right? Because those are corresponding angles, right? So if angle 2 is the same thing as angle 6, that makes angle 6 110 degrees, which would mean that angle 6 and angle 7 are supplementary. So angle 2 and angle 7 would also be supplementary, which means they have to add to be 180 degrees. So 110 plus something equals 180. So angle 7 has to be 70 degrees, right? So the measure of angle 7 would be 70 degrees because angle 2, angle 7 and angle 2 are supplementary. Right? And it's kind of hard to see, I know, but you have to think about, okay, how can I make these two relate, right? And I can follow this process. Angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding, so those are congruent. And then 6 and 7 I know are supplementary, so that means 7 and 2 are also supplementary, right? So let me go through, and then measure of angle 8. Okay, so now we have angle 8. So now, if I erase all this, so this was 110, and this was 137. Right, angle 8 is on the same transversal R, right here. So we have to say, okay, which one is it going to be related to? Well, once again, it's going to be related to angle 2, right? Angle 2 and angle 8 are alternate interior angles, which means they are congruent. So angle 8 has to be the same measure as angle 2. And then lastly, we have angle 3. Angle 3 is on which transversal? Well, it's on this transversal here, which means it's going to be related to angle 11 somehow. And in fact, those would be corresponding angles, right? If I picked this whole block and moved it this way, angle 3 and angle 11 would fall in the same spot. Okay? Which means angle 3 would be congruent to angle 11, which is 137 degrees. Okay? Last one is number 7, and this time we have certain properties with these angles, and we're trying to figure out what x is, not the entire measure. So we have parallel lines and cut by a transversal. So part A says angles 1 and 2 are corresponding angles. What does that mean? They're congruent. They're equal. So a measure of angle 1, so that means we know that measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2, right? Well, the measure of angle 1 is 45 degrees, and the measure of angle 2 is x plus 25 degrees, right? And we're trying to figure out what x is. So to figure out x, we just have to solve this simple equation. So we subtract 25 to get x by itself, and we get x equals 20, right? So in this case, the value of x would be 20. Understand this, it is not 20 degrees. We are not finding the overall measure. We are just trying to figure out what x is, what number. Okay? For 3 and 4, angles 3 and 4 are alternate interior angles, so they are also congruent. So the measure of angle 3 and the measure of angle 4 are equal to each other, right? So that means 2x has to equal 80, and then if we divide them, we know that x would equal 40. Okay? So we have to understand all these different properties that make them congruent. So I hope that kind of helps. And if it doesn't, let me know. I'm going to be offering a Zoom session tomorrow for office hours for you to ask questions if you need it. And so I hope you're having a great day, and thanks for watching.